Hello everyone, my name is Quamia Ross and today my message is called Field Slave. Now, before I go into this message, first I want to apologize to those of you who saw my last video. I'm apologizing because I'm apologizing to my Heavenly Father because of the things I said. I know that God is a just God. I know that God is a powerful God. I know that He is going to reward the wicked. But sometimes when I'm dealing with a lot of suffering and pain, it becomes burdensome. It becomes to a point where I get upset that God's not answering me right away. And so I just want to come on here because I know a lot of you have watched that video, and those of you who have watched it, I want to apologize because what I said was wrong. And I don't want to dissuade anyone. Again, I always tell you, I don't want to dissuade anyone. I don't want anyone to think any negative thoughts about God. I don't want to lead anyone astray. This is my testimony, and I stand by my testimony. The Lord has delivered me out of many bondages. The Lord is long-suffering, but He is a just God. A lot of times I feel that He is unjust towards me, but I know that He is a just God. So with that being said, I want to go into this message. I hope you all have been having a great weekend so far. I hope your weekend is getting off to a good start. But first, I want to talk to you about the field slave. And I know many of you have heard these stories. We've heard these stories. We've read books about this, where during the times of slavery, there were different groups. There were the field slaves who were working out in the fields. They were doing a lot of grueling, hard work. They were laboring, picking cotton. They were out in the hot heat. They were subjected to the temperaments and the weather. They were laboring. Their bodies were in pain. They were aching. A lot of times they were treated harshly. They could not have the same privileges and leniency and freedom as the other sets of slaves. And these slaves were called, basically, they were the home slaves. They sat inside the house with the masters, the slave masters and slave owners. And they did light work, comfortable work. They were inside. They were not outside doing the grueling, hard work and labor. They were treated better. They were given more privileges, access to things. And so a lot of times this built up some type of resentment between these two groups of people because the others felt that they were treated worse. They were subjected to more harsher conditions. They were subjected to harsh labor. They did not a lot of times get the privileges and the rewards and the benefits that the other groups of slaves were able to have, those who had favor with master. And so what I want to talk about with this type of thing, this is what's going on right now. We're talking about the field slaves. And I talk to God because we're all in those who are His children, those who are Christians, those who are born again, those who are followers of Jesus Christ, we're all in a spiritual war. I say spiritual because we're not fighting physically, we're fighting spiritually. A spiritual war means we have to take up certain armor. We have to use certain things that God has equipped us with, that the Lord Jesus Christ has equipped us with. And these are our spiritual weapons that we use. And a lot of times I ask God, I was like, Lord, I feel like you treat me like a field slave. You have me out here doing all the hard work and all the labor, and we've gone through a lot. Many of you who watch this channel, you know what we've gone through. I don't like to keep repeating and reciting the same things, but just to give you a synopsis, a brief synopsis of everything that we have gone through. I have had to be displaced out of my home numerous times, go from place to place, fighting the battle for God's people. God told me His people were in captivity. They were in bondage, and He wanted someone to go and free them. He wanted to use me as a modern day Moses. I talked about this before. I didn't know what was going on. All I just knew that God said His people were in bondage. And when I signed up for this, a woman who appointed me, she was a woman pastor, and she called a church altar call for those who wanted to be used by God. And I had just come back to Him. For those you know the story, I had strayed away for a while because I was hurting. My life, I was in bondage and I didn't understand what was going on, and I blamed God, and I was so hurt. And so I finally came back to church after my mother prayed for many years, and I came back to God. And this woman at this church, after I'd probably been there probably no more than a month, and I was so on fire with God, I was filled with so much zeal and I wanted to be used by Him. She gave this altar call. And she asked us to come up. She says, God's going to use you. You want to answer God's call. Because you know, God needs laborers. We need laborers in the kingdom, in the body of Christ. We need those who are going to be equipped for his kingdom, equipped for His war, to do what it is that He has called them to do. And so I stood up and I got in line. My mom didn't go in line, but I got in line because I was eager and I was filled with zest. I was ready to be used. I was enthusiastic about this, and I didn't know what I was about to face. So I got in line, and this woman looked at me. And before she laid hands on me and appointed me, she said, this is going to either make you or break you. And I will always remember those words because I was so confused. And she put her hands on me. She prayed over me. I got out of line, and I'm like, what does she mean by that? I didn't understand what she meant, that this is going to either make you or break you. And so when I was called into this, my life completely changed drastically. Right after that, not too long after that, I stopped working. It's like God threw me out on the battlefield. Imagine just being drafted into the army. You're drafted into a war. You don't know what's to expect. You've never been in battle before. You're basically a rookie. You've never been on the front lines, and you're drafted and you're placed right out here on the front lines, and you're now preparing to fight against this other army. And they have all these weapons. They're equipped. They've been battling for years. If you remember how David was when he stood up there and he battled against Goliath. Goliath was a seasoned soldier. He was a seasoned warrior, meaning he had had many battles. He had been accomplished in war. He had experience of being in war. He had experience of fighting and winning wars. He knew how to fight in battle. He knew what to expect. David was new. But David had been groomed for this. His entire life, he was being prepared as a child. As you remember, he fought against bears and lions. He guarded the sheep and protected them. And see, God put certain things inside of him to prepare him for that moment. He was prepared. He was courageous. He was fearless. And he was filled with strength. And he relied heavily on God. So see, God knew what he put inside of David when he anointed him and appointed him. And he was prepared for that. And so when I was set out here on the battleground, all of a sudden, I was faced with all types of opposition. I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't understand what was happening. But this had been, the Lord had already shown me. He was preparing me since I was a little girl. Since I was a little girl, I was always fearless. I was I seen things in my house that I grew up with, in a house where I had a great grandmother who practiced heavy witchcraft and sorcery, and we would see things inside that house. I would go to sleep at night and I would close my eyes, and I talked about this before. I would close my eyes and I would see snakes. I would literally see snakes just flying around. I would sit outside. I would go out my room. One time I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. And I don't know why I went to the bathroom. After I went to the bathroom, I didn't go back in my room because I wanted to just sit outside and sit on the couch for a moment, because we were in bondage. We were in poverty at that time. We were sleeping in one bed. I was sleeping in between my mother and father in one bedroom. And so I went out after I used the bathroom. I sat down on that couch, on that sofa, and I saw all this white fog. The windows were closed, mind you. I saw all this white fog just coming through the living room, just like a draft. I'm like, what is this? I didn't know what this was. I'm a little girl. I'm young. I'm probably about 8 or 9 years old. And I'm seeing all this stuff. I'm witnessing all these things. My great grandmother had a prayer room that she didn't let anybody go into. She had tons of women who would come over from the neighborhood, tons of women who worship her. They basically worship her. Probably about 30 or 40 women would come over, and they would all get together and they would pray downstairs. And this was a woman who the Lord showed me years later when I was like 30 years old that she was a witch. And I didn't know any of this. She would pray for me. She would have me doing rituals and performing rituals. And she would have me dance for money. She would give me $1 or $5 sometimes. And she would just say stomp and dance. And she was initiating me. She was having me practice rituals that were grooming me for Satan's kingdom. I was appointed to be one of Satan's children. And I did not know any of this stuff. And I told you all this before. And so I was always a fearless person. I was always the one that would protect my family. I would stand up for whoever needed help. And I had a cousin who was more of a troublemaker. She was always jealous of everybody. I don't know what the problem was. She was always hateful and jealous. And she was a loving girl sometimes, but she let her jealousy get in the way. It was probably not her fault because the way her parents treated her, but she probably felt a lot of rejection. But she would go and start trouble with girls, and mainly pretty girls. It was always pretty girls who were light-skinned, had long hair, a certain look to them. And she was always antagonizing these girls. And she would come back and get me and say, oh, they're messing with me. See, I'm fearless. They come to me because I'm the one who's known as the fighter. I would fight. I didn't care how big you were. I didn't care how tall you were. I went out there and I just went out there, and I had a hot temper back then. And I went out there, my cousin would come to me, and she came to me one time and told me this girl was messing with her. It was her friend. And I went down the street with her and I started fighting with this girl. And so I'm fighting with this girl and I'm getting the best of this girl. And my cousin jumps in. She does something that surprises me. She jumps in this fight and starts fighting me to help her friend. Now I came down here to protect you. And she's fighting and jumping up against me. And so I started, I ran back home and I got me a bat. My mother had to stop me. I'm just keep it there. And so I started putting 2 and 2 together, and the Lord was showing me, basically, this woman would start trouble and get me involved in it. But so to tell you about the story, I was always the type of person that would stand up for people. I was always fearless, and I was a leader. A lot of people liked me. When I was a little girl, I had a lot of attention. A lot of kids were around me. They were drawn to me. I was the type of person that would accept anyone. I didn't pick with people. I didn't tease people. I didn't have any arrogance about me. And I was loved. I was favored. I was always athletic. I was always just doing all kinds of stuff. I had many gifts and talents that the Lord put inside me. So he basically let me know that he was equipping me for this purpose. And so a lot of you might not know what you're equipped for, but you think about as a child, whatever you have gone through, you might have gone through some type of tribulation or adversity. You always probably had to stand alone. I talked about this before. You might have had to go against people. You always had people coming up against you, or you were always the one who had to defend everyone or protect everyone or serve people. And so God was equipping you for what your purpose was, your destiny. A lot of times this equates to what your destiny is going to be. And so see, as me, as a fearless person who had to face a lot of adversity, like I told you, I used to get teased in school. All of a sudden, everything changed. And my great-grandmother, she was working for Satan. She was a vessel for Satan to destroy my life. She started dispersing my gifts around the entire neighborhood. She had these people come over here. She wanted to portray herself as a healer who could heal them and bring them out of their bondage. And she wanted everyone to seek her. She wanted to let everyone know she was powerful. She controlled the entire neighborhood. Everybody was afraid of her. And so she did a lot of things, a lot of evil stuff. And she was dispersing my things to all these people. And they would come and bring their children. And I talked about this before. They would bring their children to her. Oh, so they can get healed, because these children were filled with demon spirits. They were demonic spirits. All they needed was deliverance. And they came to her and she would lay hands on them, put more demons in them, and she would swap things. She would take my stuff out of me and give it to them. And so that's what was happening. And so what that had done was that watered me down, that destroyed what God had made inside of me. See, as you know, the potency of something. You ever think about some type of medicine or some type of chemical or something that is made powerful? If you mix it with water, think about a medicine or something that you use to dilute something, a soda or anything. If you use something that is of a weaker version of it and you water it down, you dilute it, that's going to take away the potency of it. Now it's not able to effectively do what it's supposed to do. It might work still, but its a potency is not as strong. So now it's probably not going to work as fast. It's going to take a longer time to work, or it might not work as well. So that's what happens when we spiritually dilute something. When you're binding other people to people, when you're using sorcery, witchcraft, and taking things that are out in one person and using and putting it inside of another person, now you are diluting them spiritually. You're diluting what God has for them. God made me a fierce warrior. God made me to be a powerful leader. God made me to do a lot of things, and a lot of you were equipped with those talents and gifts too, but some people probably would have tempered with you and changed some things. And so what I want to go back to, when this woman told me it will make me or break me, I was set out there on the battlefield, and God told me his people were in bondage, and I was working. I was a princess. To me, in my mind, I did not like labor. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I was very spoiled. I had these smooth hands. I didn't wash dishes. I didn't do anything. I barely cleaned up my room. My dad would clean up my room for me. And that's just to show you how pampered my mindset was. I was a girly girl. I loved to play with dolls when I was younger, and I loved to dress up myself. I would get my hair done all the time. I would fix myself up. I was always in the mirror looking pretty. I would put on lip gloss and heels, and I love that kind of stuff. I like to be pampered. I was a girly girl. I was somebody who wanted to be coddled and taken care of. That's what I wanted to be. That was my life. And that's what I wanted. And so when this woman told me it will make me or break me, my entire life changed. Everything. Even though I had gone through a lot of tribulation and turmoil, I was picked on and teased in school, and I had to stand alone. That was equipping me for what I was supposed to go through. And I did not know that. And so God put me out there on the front line. He had me laboring for his people, and I had all this spiritual opposition coming up against me. I had many people antagonize me spiritually. That's when I first became spiritually raped. I talked to you about this. I was spiritually sodomized. I got into it. There were witches who were flocking to me all over the place. These were troubled women, because God told me he was going to give me a women's ministry. And when he explained to me a women's ministry, it was basically as I became a teen mom, and I was not supposed to be a teenage mother. But again, the Lord let me know that people put their burdens upon me. I had a cousin of mine who came to stay with me, and she was very promiscuous. She was the type of person that would talk to anybody's man. She was always around sleeping with different men. And even when she became pregnant, she was sleeping with men that were not even her baby's father. And she came to live with us. I was probably about 13 years old when she came to stay at our home. And she already had one child, and she was pregnant with another. And she didn't want to take care of her children. She had a 2-year-old son, and they had me watching the baby. And I was upset about that. She took my room. My dad and my mother had me sleep on the couch and give her my room. And I was kind of pissed off. Imagine being a 13-year-old girl, and you have to leave your room, so your cousin that you never even met before, you met for the first time, they come and live with you. So you had to give up the bedroom. And so I had to give up my bedroom to her, and I was sleeping on the sofa. And so we would basically get into altercations because I didn't like her. I looked down on her at one point because I felt that she was not taking care of herself. She was keep the room messy. She was messing up my room. And I had to look after her 2-year-old son, and he was tearing things up. I remember one time he went into the bedroom and he was tearing things up off the wall, and my dad came and scolded me, like, why aren't you watching him? I got so upset. I'm like, well, he's not my responsibility. Why can't she watch her own son? Why are you getting mad at me? This is not my child. And I'm sitting here, a 13-year-old girl, I want to live my life, and she's sitting there on the phone. She was talking on the phone all day to different men, and she thought she was a princess. She was a beautiful girl, but she was nasty. She didn't keep her house clean. She didn't keep my room clean. She didn't take it by herself, and she had an odor. And I didn't like her because I thought that at that time, I just felt like, okay, I don't like this lady. I don't like her because she was 19 and I was 13. I didn't like her because I felt like this is wrong. This woman comes in here. She doesn't clean her house. She doesn't clean my room. She doesn't clean up after herself. She doesn't watch her child. She sits here talking to different men. And so my dad would get on her and make her get a job. She finally got a job working at McDonald's. And so I was talking to this young boy at this time that I really liked. We were neighborhood friends. I met him through the neighborhood. My mom were acquaintances with their family. And so one day I went over to the house and he was talking to me and I really liked him. And I took down his number and he called me one day and I was asleep. And he called me and I guess that my cousin ended up picking up this phone and she ended up talking to him and she had wrote his number down on I guess she wrote it down trying to talk to him. And I was so upset about that. And I walked in the room and I saw his number written down on the dresser. And I'm like, why do you have his number written down? And she just started saying something really smart to me, like, oh, check the man. And I was like, we got into an altercation about him. Like, why would you try to talk to him? He's 17 years old. You're 19, about to be 20. And I said, he called the house for me, but you get his number. I was very upset with her. And so she was a very loose woman. And to make matters, to basically get into what I'm talking about, the Lord let me know that they put their burdens upon me. My aunt who sent her to live there, she didn't want her to live with her in her home because she didn't want her around her husband. She knew how this woman was. She knew my older cousin was a loose girl and she was sleeping with everybody. There was a generational curse over her and she was troubled. She had troubles, but she ended up turning her life around. But the Lord let me know years later, many years later, because when I saw her again, I was like 21 years old trying to get to school and I was working and I was struggling. And I was having a hard time and I was always a smart girl and school would always come easy for me because I was very brilliant. But she was boasting to me of how she had gone to school. She worked while she was in school and she had this computer programming degree. She got a degree in computer programming. She was married now. She was living in New York in this great place. And the Lord let me know she had this business and everything. The Lord let me know that they put their burdens upon me. They swapped everything in the spiritual realm. And so a lot of people were putting their burdens upon me because after she left the house, all of a sudden I started talking to boys. I wasn't thinking about any boys or anything. And all of a sudden, this is what happens. And this is what happens when people spiritually bind themselves to you or they take on your destiny. They exchange your destiny with theirs. And so what they were meant to be, because her life was going downhill. She was not doing nothing with her life. My mother had me in private schools. I was a smart girl. I was always reading. I was learning. And there were a lot of people who cast their burdens upon me. And my mother reached out to these people and helped them. And they used this to come up against me. They cast their burdens upon me. And so basically, I became promiscuous. My father, not only that, my father introduced me to pornography at a young age. And these spirits were able to attach themselves to me. And so, yes, I became a teenage mother. But I had to bear that shame that was not even mine. This woman put her burdens upon me. She was a 19-year-old girl, 20 years old, wasn't working. My father had to make her finally get a job at McDonald's. And so after she left our home, she was stealing things and taking things all along. She had stolen all my stuff and she was using it, putting me on the altars and taking my destiny from me. And she became basically successful. She went on and got her a degree in computer programming. She became married. And I don't know, no one probably ever knew about what her lifestyle, her past lifestyle, but basically what happened, she swapped her life with mine. She swapped our destiny. And so a lot of people have been doing that, and a lot of people have been dispersed of my gifts. And so when I went back to that, when I came back to God after I saw all this trouble, my whole life had turned around, and I had this drastic change in my life, I walked away from God because I didn't understand what was going on. And so when I came back to God and accepted that altar call, the Lord transformed me. I became celibate. I immediately stopped having sex. I got rid of the boyfriend because I had long-term relationships with the father of my children. We were in a relationship probably 7 years. And so I cut him out of my life. I got rid of him. I told him to leave. I wasn't doing this anymore. And I ended up right away. I was on fire for God. I turned my life just changed. It's like, this is why I say when you can come out of any type of bondage with Jesus Christ's help. I was a person who was, like I said, I was fornicating. I was masturbating and doing other things. And I had basically at that time, I wouldn't say I was addicted to sex, but I had lived a promiscuous lifestyle. I was in my sin. I was living with my boyfriend. And so I had sex out of wedlock and I just didn't want anything to do with God. because I was so hurt. But after I came back to him, my mother prayed for me, and I finally went to church, and they healed me and delivered me of all these things. They cast these demon spirits out of me. I went on a complete 360 turnaround. And so I was on fire for God. I changed right away. So you don't have to, it doesn't take, some people might take you years. If you allow God to work with you, sometimes it could take you a while, it could take you months, but God changed me right away because he had a purpose for me. And so he was able to transform me. I'm not going to say it wasn't a struggle. It was a struggle. And he transformed me right away. And I got rid of everything. I cut everything out. I got rid of the men in my life, and I stopped having sex. I stopped all the stuff that I was doing, and I just became on fire for God. I would spend hours reading the Bible and praising God and praying. I would pick up every piece of literature I can get, whether I go to the library or if I can get some type of money, I would buy these books, and I would listen to these preachers and pastors, and I would listen to them ministering, and I was studying and studying. God was preparing me. I would fast. I would go on fast, and I would just sit here and embark on a journey with God. And every day he was revealing things to me. The Holy Spirit was revealing things. I was so on fire, and I would go out and I would spread the testimony to so many people. I was bringing people, winning souls for Christ. And I was going all around the neighborhood, and I went to this church, and people saw me. And that's when they told me, I started writing this book. I lost all this weight. The Lord went, because like I said, they were putting their burdens upon me, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I had became so obese that I was up to 250 pounds. And so the Lord had delivered me from all of that. He brought me out of the bondages, out of the food addiction. I was eating unhealthy, eating junk food. And I didn't always eat junk food. When I was a young girl, I was eating fruits. I love fruits. I love fruits and grains and vegetables and things that I ate healthy. We ate nuts and trail mix, things like that. I talked about this before. And so they put their burdens upon me. And so the Lord delivered me out of all that. But when I went on the front battle line, and this is going to be a lengthy message, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can listen to all of it. The Lord transformed me right away. He delivered me out of the promiscuity. He delivered me from any type of sexual addictions or any type of sexual sins that I was involved in and entangled in. And I was able to be a light. The Lord was using me as a light, and I was ministering to young women. That was my whole thing. The Lord put in my heart that since I was a teenage mother who had once been disrespecting myself, who did not have a father who treated me right, who had a father who introduced me to pornography and was not there to give me the love, and I was equating love with sex. I was using my body to gain love. I was using my body to gain favor with men and whatever it is that I needed. And so the Lord had turned that around, and I wanted to go on an agenda, on a journey, to bring other young women like myself to God and to minister to them and show them how to respect and love their bodies. And so I started going on this journey where I became very healthy. I lost all this weight. I got down to like probably 150 pounds. I was like wearing a size 7, a size 6, and I was in great shape. I was always an athletic girl, but like I said, when they were putting their burdens upon me, I didn't know this. They put everything upon me. They put their sexual sins upon me. They put their gluttony and their all their perversions on me, their obesity, everything. They swapped my destiny. And this was happening because the door was open through my great-grandmother, who was doing witchcraft and sorcery, and who laid me on her altar and got the help of my father to come up against me and using people, my family. And when my cousin came to stay with me, they swapped everything. All these people were dispersing of my things and giving it to all these people. So it was basically destroying the potency of the spirit inside of me. And so let me go back. When I came back, I went on this journey. And I was able to be delivered of all of these sexual sins and everything that was then, all these bondages. And I was on fire. I was ministering to other girls and going around and talking to young women who were young mothers like me. And I was trying to get them to love God, to come out of their bondages. And like I told you all before, I would spend money on them if they needed groceries for their children, or if they wanted to go somewhere. I would give them money and help them with their kids. And I didn't have much at that time, but the Lord already let me know what he wanted me to do with my life. And the enemy wanted to stop that. So he used a lot of people to come up against me. And so basically my entire destiny, it basically was turned around where these people were fighting against me. I was thrust out of my home. I was not working at the time because the Lord told me to sit at home and learn about him. He wanted me to write books, and that was supposed to be my path. That was supposed to be my journey, where I would write books, and I was supposed to make money off my books, and I was supposed to start an outreach program. The Lord wanted me to have an outreach ministry. It was mostly basically like a women's shelter. And I was going to be able to talk to these different women and lead them to Christ. And I never got to have that because there were people who fought relentlessly over my life. And these were people who were dispersed of my gifts and talents when I was a young girl. And they were holding on to my life for all these years, binding themselves to me, taking everything out of me. And so I felt like I had lost everything and I was fighting and battling. There was so much spiritual attack, so much spiritual resistance coming up against me. I had to go through so much and I didn't know what was happening. People, like I said, people were astral projecting out of their bodies and using magic and sorcery to rape me. They were violating me sexually, and I feel things having sex with me. I could feel a man's anatomy. I talked about this before. I felt something going in and out of me, and I could not do anything. I would feel people scratching me and cutting at me, and they were using, the Lord let me know, they were using voodoo dolls, they were using puppets, they were using all kinds of things representing me in the kingdom of darkness. They were holding me on their altars. They had spiritual altars where they would pray and loose curses and spells upon, and they would use something that represented me because they had some of my personal belongings, and all you need is someone's DNA, which they were getting in the middle of the night. I would wake up with cuts and scratches. They were taking my blood. They were taking things out of my house, personal possessions of mine. I would wake up with my clothes missing, my earrings and jewelry missing, all types of things, even pictures and stuff they had of mine when I wrote my weight loss book. They were using that. The Lord let me know that when I wrote that weight loss book, there were so many people who had stolen everything from me. And so I was fighting for years. Me and my children could not have the life we were supposed to have had. We were basically met with spiritual opposition from different groups of people who were coming up against us, and I had to be thrust out of my home. God had me from place to place. He told me his people were in bondage, they were in captivity. I was going from different schools, different neighborhoods, trying to free the people, praying for them, doing spiritual warfare, and I would be met with all types of opposition. They were coming up against my children. They were making us physically ill. They were attacking us. They were basically fighting up against us in the physical realm as well. We had all these different problems, and no one wanted us around. They would follow us around, stalk us, harass us. They would send things inside the houses. I talked about this before. I would have flies appear out of nowhere in my home, numerous flies. I kill one, another one would come back, and they were monitoring me. These were spiritual monitoring. They would send devices to monitor me, monitoring demons. They would use flies to monitor me. They were attacking us. They were binding themselves to us, taking everything. And so, as I said, when I feel like a field slave, I went around for years laboring for God's kingdom, laboring to bring people out of bondage, going from different organizations, going from different churches, fighting for the churches that were in bondage and captivity, fighting for the schools, the children who were in opposition, because he said his people were in captivity. As you know, his people, those who were being spiritually oppressed, those who were basically not able to have freedom and liberty. As you remember, the slaves and the enslaved in days of slavery, they had to labor. They did not have anything. And these people were basically in a bondage. They could not serve God. They were not free to serve God. They had them in a bondage. And so God wanted his people free. And I was met with all types of spiritual opposition where people were actually fighting up against me and my children. I had no one to help me because I was not able to get married. I did not have a man around. The Lord told me I was supposed to get married, but there were so many women who bound themselves to me, and they were led with Jezebel spirits. They destroyed my marriage. They destroyed me from even meeting who I was supposed to meet because they were all taking things from me. And to this day, I still have 60-year-old women, 50 and 60-year-old women who want to look youthful, who want to look young, who have taken things from me, have taken my hair, taken my DNA, my skin tone, and everything. And if you think about the days of slavery, there were slave masters and slave owners who would take the teeth out of their slaves and they would put it in their own mouths. And so you're doing the same thing. This is why I was so upset. Like I said, wow, the black people, you all didn't like it when you were in slavery. You didn't like what the Europeans were doing to you and putting you in captivity, but you went around and put me in slavery. You put me in bondage. You put your own people in bondage. What you're doing to me is what they had done to you. When they took things, they took our body parts. They took the body parts of our ancestors, your ancestors' body parts. They would take it and they would make you labor for them, and you would not get anything. You wouldn't see anything of it. And so that's what happened to me. I was laboring spiritually. I had to lose. I talked about how I lost weight over and over for this person. People were putting their burdens upon me, literally putting fat upon me. I would have clumps of fat, and I still do to this day. I had clumps of fat all over my thighs, all over my stomach, all over my legs, and I knew this was spiritual fat. The Lord let me know this is demonic fat because the fat was not there. It was not there. It's like it would come on within a few minutes or just a day. I would see a change in my body, and I was losing weight over and over, and I didn't understand what was happening. Like, well, why am I losing weight? And then I turn around 2 days later, all this fat is on me all over again. I've seen my legs all floppy and flabby, and my breasts feel real heavy and big, and my stomach is getting real big and it's sticking out. And I know my stomach wasn't like that before, and the Lord's let me know they're putting spiritual fat upon me. So basically what they were doing was to lose weight. They were using spiritual altars and witchcraft and sorcery and magic and having demons put fat upon me from their bodies. And they would walk around small while I'm doing all the labor. I'm getting out here every day running. And I was, like I said, I was in pain. I'm walking around, running around. My knees are hurting. My ankles are hurting. I have people cutting in my legs and feet at night because they're retaliating against me because I'm trying to free his people. I'm fighting to get your people out of bondage. And so I'm being met with a retaliation. And so my legs were already hurting, my joints and knees, and people were taking their burdens and putting it upon me instead of going to God and laboring for themselves. And so I was forced to labor for years. My children were in bondage. They took knowledge out of my brain, knowledge that I had gained up for years, working on jobs, years going to school, learning and reading and just learning things, my knowledge and my talent, everything that was mine, my communication skills. And it's like, when I was a young girl, I remember people will always laugh at me. There were a lot of black children who did not treat me right when I was young, and I've gotten over that. I'm just talking about it because I'm giving you a backstory. And I would always talk a certain way because I was going to private schools. I had a lot of Caucasian friends, and I was around a lot of Caucasian people. And that's not because I didn't like black people. It's because the black people did not like me. Black children seemed to mistreat me. They would pick on me. They were jealous of me. And I didn't know all this time that they were jealous. They would laugh at me, say, oh, you talk white. You sound like a white girl. Not knowing that when you speak well, when you have eloquence and you're able to dictate, that does not mean that you're speaking white. That's how we were so whitewashed to the point where we made ourselves feel like if someone speaks with intelligence and they carry themselves a certain way, oh, you're portraying yourself as a white person, not knowing that a lot of us come from the palaces and our own people. We have a heritage, and they made us feel that our heritage, we're supposed to be low class and ignorant and speak in ebonics and slurs and all kinds of slang and curse words. And we're not supposed to speak and carry ourselves intellectually or intelligent and hold an intelligent and profound conversation. We're not supposed to speak with eloquence and diction. And so whenever you spoke with any type of intelligence or use words that were bigger, they would laugh at you. And they laughed at me and say, oh, you speak white, you try to be white, you're Oreo, this and that. And they would call me an Oreo. And I was not accepted. And I talked about this before. I was very smart. And so this is what happens with our people. You look at, you're filled with jealousy. You want to bring your own people down. And this is why I told God before. I said, Lord, I'm tired. I used to talk about it all the time because I said, I'm tired of laboring for the black race of people. And this is what they do. They mistreat their own all the time. Yes, I tell you, I'm Native American. I have Indian blood in me, but I'm also a black person. I have Egyptian blood and everything. I have black heritage. You might have done everything to change everything, even taking my hair texture and everything to destroy my heritage, who I truly am. Like I said, I used to always have good, I had what will be equated to as good hair, but it was my hair. It was my hair texture. And a lot of black people, a lot of black women, you did not like your hair. And so you went and took my hair texture from me because you didn't want to embrace who God created you. And this is what I look at. It's like you hurt your own people. You might not have considered me like you because you felt I was different. But God makes us different for a purpose. You didn't understand what God had me for. He was using my family to help free people out of bondage. And you all came up against me. You all came and fought up against me. I was being fought up against by both ends. I was being fought up against by Caucasian families because it was a spiritual battle. Because they did not want God to free his people. And so they were resisting. They were fighting up against me and destroying me, attacking me on every end. And then I was fought up against by the black race of people who were basically in a bondage and they want to stay in bondage. It's like, oh, you want to stay in your bondage because you don't understand that you're in a bondage. You might have a nice little job, but you're still in a bondage. You're still being controlled. You still are not free. And you're still not serving God. You're doing your sorceries. You're still in a bondage, but you're taking from me now. And I was in a position where I'm like, Lord, this is not fair to me. I wake up in the morning. You look at my hair right now. You look at my hair. I cut my hair 3 months ago. It's still the same length. It hasn't grown at all. It hasn't grown an inch. And it's really hard. When I wake up in the morning, my hair is so hard and so dry because they have taken everything about my hair. I used to have the loose curl pattern in my hair. My hair was very soft and very fine, very real soft and fine. And people were jealous of it. Over the years, I would always have girls putting their hands in my hair. Oh, your hair is so soft. People would do my hair. Oh, your hair is so soft. Hairdresser would call everybody. Oh, touch her hair. Her hair is so soft. Feel her hair. You have good hair. You didn't like your hair that you have, but you took my hair. And now my hair doesn't grow. My hair is really short. It's very, what you call coarse, very coarse. It's not the hair God put on my head. God knows. You think that God does not know when you change and alter yourself or you steal from another human being? And see, so everything you took out of me, God had it for a purpose. For his own purpose, to help his people, to free his people. And I had so many jealous people, envious people sitting around me. Like I said, a lot of times when black people see one person thriving at something, you're jealous. You want to jump on this bandwagon and bring them down. You want to conspire. I'm not saying that other cultures and race groups don't do that, but we do it the most. The black race does it the most against their own people. And then you want to get together and say, let's have unity. But you're still coming up against, you have these different groups of people and you still mistreat other groups. You're still putting your own people in bondage. And this is why this stuff is happening to this day, where they're getting rid of DEI and all this other stuff, because God says in his word, if you're for captivity, captivity. And so I have literally women to this day, 60-year-old women, older women, still in my youth out of me. They didn't like the fact that I had fine texture hair. That was the hair God created me with. That was part of my DNA. I was a lighter complexion. I had a lighter complexion. God let me know that they're swapping my melanin now. They're taking all their UO melanin, they're swapping and taking my melanin. This is why you see me with all these dark circles under my eyes, and my eyes are getting real dark. You see my nose, they took the shape of my nose and everything, taking my lips. My lips are black, they were pink. You took everything about me and you put your flaws on me, everything about yourself that you didn't like, and you destroyed that. You destroyed my purpose. You took my knowledge out of my brain. And I'm not saying, there were many people who saw that I was well-spoken. That was a gifted and talented. God put in me for a purpose, for his purpose. God gave me my beauty and my athleticism, my strength, and my body type for a reason. And there were so many people who took that. And you didn't like the fact when you were being oppressed. You didn't like when your oppressors took everything from you. But you're therefore doing the same thing to me. And so this is where God comes in. Because see, he used me for a purpose. And I felt like I was a field slave. And there are a lot of people who are treated as a field slave. As you know, there are groups of people who are able to gain their basically, you gain your benefit and your reward. You have your success now because you've gained your favor with master. You've gained your favor, but now you oppress the others. You've oppressed them. You kept them from having. We lived in poverty for years. I've not been able to have a job for years. I've been sleeping on the floor, sleeping on air mattresses. I've slept on the floor for years at one point. And that was not the life that God meant for me. But there have been people, groups of people who have refused to allow me to have a job, even though I was intelligent, even though I had experience and I could easily do those jobs. I was supposed to have my own business. They cut me off and stopped me from having any of that stuff. I was writing books. They took all my gifts and talents out of me. They did not want me to use it. They destroyed my beauty. The Lord let me know I'm sitting here today with no favor. I was supposed to have a husband who was supposed to help me. I was supposed to write my books, and I was supposed to have a husband to be my favor. You're supposed to give me favor, but you all destroyed my body. You put your fat upon me. You took my looks and my beauty. You stole my skin tone. You took my texture of hair. You put nappy hair all over my head. You did because you didn't like yourselves, and you destroyed me. You put acne all over my face and melasma. Took my teeth out. My teeth are gone. Took my eyebrows off my face. Everything. And you have done that to me, but you didn't like it when they did it to your ancestors. You didn't like it when they put your people in captivity, and you would put your own in captivity. That's what I'm saying. You would put your own in bondage. And so there's some people who are out here, and this is what I had to deal with for God's kingdom. God did not want this for me, but I had to go through this, being spiritually assaulted every day. I just recently, once again, nearly died. They give me spiritual heart attacks over and over. You've been giving me spiritual heart attacks. The Lord let me know there was a python wrapped around me spiritually. And a python is going to squeeze and suffocate you. I cannot breathe for the last 2-3 days. I was struggling to breathe. And I already have asthma, but my asthma is not that bad. And so I could take an inhaler and be fine. I won't probably even have to take my inhaler unless it's really cold and I'm outside. I usually don't have to even take my inhaler. I can go weeks and days without taking an inhaler unless I really, truly need it. But I've gotten to the point where they're spiritually assaulting me and trying to murder me and take my life. I would have to take my inhaler numerous times and it would not be working. And then I will take my machine, whatever else that I need, and I would still be struggling to breathe. I'm wheezing and wheezing and wheezing, and I'm coughing up all this mucus. And the Lord let me know that they're doing this to try and give me pneumonia. They're trying to murder me. They're trying to take my life. And I've been dealing with this for years. People giving me spiritual heart attacks. People wrapping pythons, sending pythons to wrap around me and to try and take my life, squeezing me. And I feel like I can't breathe because something is weighing me down, sitting on my chest. And the Lord let me know that you put that there. And so this is what I meant by I'm going through this. Me and my children have suffered. I've been basically pitted up against and fought up against by groups of people because I was appointed to lead God's people out of bondage and free them. And because your inheritance was stolen from you and you were robbed of your inheritance. But you fought up against me. See, you do everything to gain freedom in the physical realm, but this is a spiritual battle. And we all have to pick up our swords and fight. We all have to pick up our spiritual weapons. That's what I mean by that. I'm not trying to incite any type of violence before you try to manipulate my words. Even those of you who are not of the African American race or the Black American race, you're still supposed to be fighting in God's kingdom. This is not a war of races. This is a war of the kingdom of darkness against the kingdom of light. And you don't understand that those of you who are oppressing your neighbors and oppressing your brother, you're in a bondage to Satan. Satan has already have you in a bondage, and you're going to lose your souls if you don't come out of your bondage. You don't come out of your jealousy. But you sat here and you tried to murder me numerous times. I've been basically on the battlefield where I had people spiritually fight me. I've had to go days where I had to get up in the middle of the morning and go off for 3 or 4 hours of sleep, have to war all night and pray, have to get out there and fast and continuously fast and pray and to free God's people out of bondage. We've been subjected to not having anything. We had to live in poverty. We had to be displaced from place to place, going from all these different neighborhoods and cities to pray and fight for God's people, not having anything, while you all got to enjoy your lives. You get to pass out food. You get to write books. You get to own businesses and run businesses, sit in the churches and go and pray for the people in the jails and in the hospitals. You did the easy, light work, while I had to sit here in the grueling battle, having my feet cut into, having people assault me, having demons assault me, having people violate me, having people literally put their burdens upon me, losing weight over and over, losing 100 pounds 3 or 4 times because people are transferring their fat on me every single day. And the Lord let me know, if I don't keep running, even though my legs and my knees are all messed up now, if I don't keep running, I'm going to get really big because they're going to keep putting their fat on me. And you have been laboring me. You've been laboring me. You've been taking my knowledge out of my brain, taking everything. And I needed someone to help me. There was no one to stand up and help me, but that's okay, because see, God is fighting for me now. And when I got up here and I said, I felt like a field slave, because I felt like I had it hard. There's some of us who have to labor, and we don't gain favor with master, but there's those of us, there are those who have gained your favor with master, and you've oppressed your own people, and then you're able to pass out food. You had the easy light work, and you've not joined into the spiritual hard battle, this grueling work, and you see your people on the front of the battlefield, and you have not joined into that fight. You're set back, and you were comfortable sitting in the house. I got mad at God, like the one day I'm like, Lord, they're men literally sitting on TikTok trying to look like women because they have been emasculated, and they're sitting here making TikTok videos and posing with makeup, and they call themselves Christians, they call themselves followers of Jesus Christ, but I'm sitting out here warring. I am literally fighting against demon spirits, fighting up against whole covens and groups of sorcerers and witches who want to put God's people in bondage and captivity. Having my children being retaliated against, having them being lied on and taken out of the home, being locked up, my children having their brains taken out, and they have been assaulted and destroyed. You've stolen everything from my children and taken everything and labored us. My son is 18 years old. He lies in this room all day. We have nowhere to go. He'll come downstairs. All he has is his little phone. He doesn't have anything to do. He's supposed to be going to school. He's supposed to have an education, but they put a felony out on him. They put out a warrant for his arrest and lied on him. They said that he raped a white girl when he was 16 years old, when he was in a group home, and they took him illegally out of my house and to cover up for what a man who was assaulting me, another sorcerer, a Freemason. And then the whole courts want to fight up against me and send things to try and murder me and take my life. But God is fighting that battle. But you took my son's brain. They've been attacking him since he was 3 years old in the schools, because God sent me to the school because he said his people were in captivity. And I had to pray for the schools. And I was always met with so much spiritual opposition and contention. I had to contend with the teachers and the sorcerers in the schools. They propose and portray themselves as teachers, but they're actually witches who are there to destroy his people. They were there to put his people in captivity and bondage. They're spiritually taking things out of one person and put them in another child to destroy what God had his purpose for that child. And I've talked about this for years, and there have been many people who sit there on the back line and the sidelines. You know what's going on. You didn't say a word about it. You just watched it happen. And when they all gained up upon me and retaliated by taking my kids, I had no one to stand up for me. I didn't have a black militant group to stand up for me. I didn't have a civil rights leader to go to war for me. I contacted many of them, and no one did anything. But that's okay, because see, God is my refuge. God is my vindicator. He is my counsel. He is my judge. And he's seen everything you all have done. He's seen those of you who retaliated against me. He's seen those of you who made me your literal slave. You watched me labor. You made me labor, and you reaped the benefits of my labor. You made me labor for you, and you took everything from me. You stole what was mine. You put me in bondage and captivity. You stole everything that God put inside of me. I did not get the favor and the things I was supposed to have, because you all put me in captivity and bondage. You made me a field slave. Many people have been made field slaves. Many. While the rest of you sit on in the comfortable homes, and you do the easy labor, and you oppress your brother, you oppress your neighbor, and rob them of what is theirs. And so all those who are bound and binding themselves to me, who have destroyed and diluted what God put inside of me, all those who have taken things out of me, who have stolen my beauty. That beauty was meant for me to gain favor with my spouse, which I never was able to get, because there were so many Jezebels and so many witches who have stolen everything. Like I said, there's 60-year-old women taking my youth, taking my body. I cannot gain any muscle tone. I've been running and working out consistently, and I look like I don't work out. I look sloppy and out of shape and flabby. I have no muscle tone, no body build, nothing. All of my strength was gone. They swapped my entire bone structure. They swapped my entire mesomorph physical physique that I had. Everything God created me with, you stole it and took it for yourselves. And you ruined God's purpose and plan for my life and many people's lives. And I sat on here, and this is why I said I was so tired of suffering. But God has seen the suffering. No matter what you have tried to do, you can send pythons to try and murder me. You can try to give me pneumonia, give me a spiritual heart attack. God has seen everything. As you're for death, he says death. As you're for captivity and you put me in bondage and captivity, you keep me from working, you keep me from having money, you take everything for yourselves, and you oppress God's people. What happens? What do you think will happen to you? See, I sit on here and I'm evidence of what you have done to me. I'm evidence of everything you have stolen from me, how you've oppressed me. God's going to fight to bring his people out of bondage. I sat on here on the front lines. Yes, he used me. He used my family. He used us, and we're tired of laboring now. I told God, I said, Lord, I'm broken down. I know you can sustain me. I know you're here to help me, but I've gone through so much. Like I said, I've not had anything. My entire life has been nothing but bondage and suffering and misery and pain. This was not supposed to have been our lives. They stole our inheritance. We come from the palaces of Egypt and India. They let my mother know that. The Lord already let me know I come from royalty. I'm a descendant of royalty. My ancestors were royal people. My mother came, her family came down. On both sides of her family, they were from royalty. Egyptian royalty and Indian royalty. And so this was not supposed to be in our lives. But many of you have come up against us, and this is why so many people have been stealing from us. They have stolen the wealth out of us, and a lot of you have had your wealth stolen out of you as well. And so instead of going to God and fighting, you come and take wealth out of your own brethren. You steal the wealth out of your own neighbor. You have oppressed me and laid me on your altars and stolen everything out of me. And you think that God's not going to know? He knows every hair that's on my head. He knows every hair that's on your head. You think you're going to present yourself to him wearing my hair, and he's going to look at you and he's not going to notice? You think you're going to walk up to him and on Judgment Day, and he's going to look down at your nose and say, whose nose is that? You don't think he's going to know that that's Quamia Ross's nose that you took? You don't think that he's going to know that knowledge in your brain that you use so you can get yourself that job or whatever it is that you have, that was not Quamia's knowledge, or that was not so-and-so's knowledge that you stole it from? That athleticism that you're holding on to when you were able to get your whatever it is, you got your Olympic gold medal with it. You use that stamina, that strength, that tenacity, that power, or you became a model, you walked around, you have someone else's skin. Whose skin do you have? Whose inheritance did you steal? This is what we're talking about. You might think it's petty and frivolous. No, God gave everybody something for a purpose, and you're walking around my things because you're jealousy. That's not gonna cut it. You can't justify what you've done. And you're sitting here getting justice for yourself. He said, avenge not yourselves. You could tell me, bring scriptures to me, tell me to forgive. Yes, I forgive you. I can forgive you, but you still have to pay some type of penance. You have to answer to God for what you've done to me. You want to fight me for something that's mine. Isn't that what your slave masters did to you? They destroyed you for something that belonged to you. And you're fighting me. All of you are fighting me for something that belonged to me. And you think that God's not going to fight and contend with you. He says he will contend with those who contend with us and fight against those who fight against us. You've stolen my inheritance. You've stolen everything out of me. You've taken my DNA. You've altered it. You've oppressed me. And I've been on the front lines. I was trying to fight for God's people to be free. And I was met with all types of resistance. I was met with all types of hatred. You have hated me and you have murdered me. Those who hate, when you hate, that is the same as murder. And so this message might be all over the place because this was not the way I meant for the message to go. But again, like I said, they're all bound to me, trying to live their lives. You're taking things out of your own brethren, out of your own neighbor, so you can do what? God had a purpose for my life, and you did everything to destroy that purpose. And those of you who done it, you got what you wanted. You got it the way you wanted to get it, by using your sorceries, by using your witchcraft, by using your demon gods, by holding your brethren in captivity and in bondage, by enslaving your own people, by enslaving God's children. Many of you have done that, and you want to cover it up. This is why you want to fight against me now. This is why you want to lock my son up, and you want to do everything in your power to suppress my voice. But you respect the authority. You want someone to respect the authority that you have been given, that has been appointed to you by man, but you have not respected the authority that has been appointed to me by God. God used me as his servant. He used me to execute his authority here on this earth. And many of you have come up against me and fought up against me and had contended with me. And you don't think that God's not going to contend with you. Everyone who has helped you oppress me, you think that you can murder me and God's going to allow that to happen. And even if you did successfully do it, you think that you're going to get away with that? You think you're going to get away with taking my life from me and taking the lives of all his people who he created, and he put something inside of them, and those who he has appointed to free them, and you fought them and put them in a bondage and a captivity, and you think that God's not going to do something about that? You have Satan who can give you all of your knowledge, all of your intellect, and help you, give you whatever it is, but you don't believe that there's a God. You don't believe that there's a God on this that has created this heavens and earth and even created you, and you're breathing through his grace and his mercy, but you dare fight up against his people. And you don't think he's not going to do anything about it? Yes, he equipped me for this purpose. I went through hell because he knew what my life was going to be. And I told him, now, me and my children have suffered long enough. We're tired of suffering. We've been on the front lines. We've been the field slaves, basically going through all the grueling hard work and labor while everybody else is just sitting around being comfortable, and they want to reap the benefits of all of our hard work and labor. And I told him it's unjust. I want justice. I want to be avenged of my adversaries. I want rest and peace from adversity. I want what is owed to me from all those who have stolen my life, who have taken everything from me, who have lived off my things, who have me labor in vain and stolen the fruits of all my labor and hard work. All those who have come up against me, insulted me, assaulted my children, stolen everything out of us, put us in captivity and bondage. There are many people who have not been freed. He said he came to set the captives free. It's like captivity captive. And I believe what his word says. And I believe that he has decreed freedom and declared freedom over me and over the rest of you all. Freedom only comes through Jesus Christ, though. And when you put your own brethren in bondage, when you put another man in bondage and captivity, what does the word say? See, the Lord let me know that he allowed all this stuff to happen to me because the pharaohs will put people in captivity and bondage. Many years ago, thousands of years ago, my ancestors were putting people in captivity. And so those of you who are still holding people in bondage to this day, still have people in captivity, well, you think that you're not going to be put in bondage? Your ancestors have put people in captivity, and you yourselves have put people in captivity. And I'm not just talking about one group of people, one race. There are many races have put people in captivity. Some of you put your own people into captivity, your own color. Those who identify with your race, you'll put them in captivity. You still put them in captivity, even when you're using sorcery and witchcraft. That is still another form of bondage and captivity. Now you're enslaving them through sorcery and witchcraft, and they have broken God's laws. There might not be any laws here on this earth or in this country that, like I talked about before, in the country of America, there might not be any laws against sorcery and witchcraft, but God has specific laws against sorcery and witchcraft. And when you use sorcery and witchcraft to put another person in captivity or to steal what belongs to another man and rob them of their lives and their inheritance, what do you think is going to happen? When you fight against another person, you try to murder them, or you take their lives using witchcraft and sorcery, and you conjure up demons, you do spell work, but witchcraft, whether you're doing magic or psychic powers, you might say it's a thought and try to pass it off as, oh, I didn't do it, I just thought about it. That's why he tells you to cast down every imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of God and bring every thought into captivity unto the obedience of Jesus Christ. You will even have to pay for the thoughts that you thought about another person. You will have to pay for everything you've done. Every man's going to stand and make up for what they have done. They're going to pay and give an account for everything they've done. They're going to be judged accordingly for everything you have done, everything you have said, everything you've done to destroy another person's life, when you lied and joined forces together and you slandered another human being and you wrongfully held them in bondage and captivity. Yes, I have been used as the one that had to labor for years, doing all the hard work while some of you had an easy life. And I'm not happy about it, but I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to him because he has sustained me. He's the only one that brought me out of that. When I had groups of covenants and groups of networks and people coming up against me, when I had people doing sorcery, sending demons to destroy me and attack me, when I was being sodomized, people actually projecting out of their bodies and attacking me, walking around in the stores and in the jobs, people persecuting me and attacking me, giving me headaches, giving me migraines to the point I become temporarily blinded, making me physically ill, causing me to become sick, making my children physically ill, putting my children in captivity and bondage, taking my kids out of the house when I thought I was going to die, burning my hair, literally burning my hair off my head when my scalp is burning like it's lying acid on it, taking my body, putting pounds and pounds of fat upon me, trying to kill me that way, making me binge eat, sending gluttoning spirits to me to cause me to binge eat everything you have done to me, cutting in my feet to the point I'm in excruciating pain. I'm in crying tears, begging and pleading to God to stop me, but it continues to go on for years. He groomed me. I give him that glory. That's my testimony, because he brought me out of it. Everything you have done to me, all the shame, walking around for years in poverty with no money because you have stopped me from working. You have gained upon me and blocked every form of money. I have no resources. Like I said, I have not had any money in years of my own. I have not had an income. You have kept a man from his own livelihood. You cut him off from every resource. I've been cut off from every single resource there is. They have kept me away from other people. They have kept me, plucked me out of my house. They've taken my car from me. They have taken my money. They kept me from having money. Everything. You have cut me off from everything. You don't think that you're going to reap what you have sown? Yes, I was treated like the one who had to put up with all the grueling pain so his people can be free. That was the price I had to pay because I spoke up and fought for his people and I answered his call. But those who all came up against me, those who done this thing to me, you touched his anointed servant. You touched God's anointed. You fought, basically, you might as well have fought him yourself, Because when you touch me, it's like you were fighting him. When you touch his anointed, who he is appointed to help free his people and to do the work for his people, and you take from them and rob them and try to murder them, what do you think you're doing? You're doing it to him. And it says it in his Bible. So those of you who are making justifications, you need to go back and read that word. You cannot be working and operating out of the Holy Spirit. You're operating out of a familiar spirit, a spirit of divination, a spirit of lying, a spirit of error. You're not operating out of the Holy Spirit, because there is no justification. None of that stuff you have done is of God. So again, I want to talk about this because this is Black History Month. And many of you are holding your own people in captivity. Many of you. You're still doing it to this day, putting your people in bondage. And we know who's controlling all this, and you will answer to God. Those who have stolen our inheritance, those who have lied and put slander and lied about who they truly are. You might get mad and incensed with anger, but you need to come out of your own bondage. Because see, we're in the last days, and there's a lot of hell to come. It's just going to get worse. It's not going to change. It's going to get worse, because he's about to reward the wicked for what they've done, and he's allowing this to come to this place because now wrath and justice is coming forth. If you read the Bible, we're in the Revelations now. We're in the book of Revelations, and all of his prophecies are now coming forth. They're about to be manifested. And so you're sitting here putting your people in bondage and captivity. You're laboring for all this material gain. That's not where it's at. See, God cares more about the transformation on the inside. He cares more about your your inward transformation, not outwardly. He does not care about all the stuff. Many people are laboring now. You're laboring to get your money. You're laboring to get your houses, your business, your wealth, all this stuff. But are you laboring to change your heart? Are you laboring to become like God, to become like Christ? And see, you're making justification. You're still stuck in your bondage. But see, God can free you out of your bondage. Like I gave that testimony, he immediately, yes, I had to sit here and earnestly want it. I had to do what he told me to do, but he broke that bondage off of me right away. I came out of it. I was able to go from what I was, and he changed me and transformed me. I became a new man and a new creature in him. And he can do the same for you. But see, you walk around with your jealousy. You look at me when I'm on this video channel. All you looking at is how I look, trying to find out how I look, worrying about all this stuff, dumb stuff. Ignorant stuff. Like I said, people have taken my beauty that was meant for me to gain favor with my husband, to do God's work. And that was my beauty. That was what you put inside me. You made me ugly. You call me ugly. Now that's okay, because I have all these women bound to me, taking things out of me so that you can pose at 60 years old. I've seen these pictures. They're showing me the people who stole from me, and you helped these people steal from me because you took it first, and you bring all these witches along, all your other witches and sorcerers, and you all been taken from me. You know what you're doing. You feel guilty, but you want to show me all these people. I've seen the 60-some-year-old women wearing hot shorts up to the butt crack almost. Stomach hanging all out, boobs hanging all out. You flaunting and looking good with somebody else's stuff. You're 60 years old. This is what I said, when I was a child, I behaved as a child. I became a man. I put away childish things. You're supposed to flee your childhood lust. You're supposed to be at the point where you're teaching other women how to be respectful, how to love and embrace their bodies. But then you want to corrupt. You want to take my stuff and defile me, bind yourself to me, steal my stuff that God put inside of me so you can go out and promote whoredom. That is the spirit of Jezebel, because you're teaching other people how to fornicate. You have a spirit of Jezebel on you. You're taking something that don't even belong to you, and you're using it to do what? To incite sin, to elicit sin in other people. And you're going to answer to God for that. He's going to look down on you while you posing and flaunting at 60-some years old. You're going to say, well, what are you doing with yourself? It's time to grow up mentally. You can't not be stagnated mentally. Some people have no cognitive development, and you're still stuck in the same place. You have not grown. And this is what's going on. You're sitting in the churches, and you're going to church. You're talking about God, but how can you look at God? That's not of God. Whoredom is not of God. Flaunting your body and enticing men to sin is not of God. You're teaching other women what's wrong. You're talking about God in these messages, but you're sitting here with your legs half wide open and a hot shirt on and your boobs hanging out, and you wonder why no one's taking you seriously. That is a familiar spirit. This is a spirit of Jezebel, and people think that they're serving God. You're not serving God. And you know you're not serving God because you're doing witchcraft and sorcery, and you're making justifications for it. And you're putting your own people in captivity and bondage. And you're sitting up here right now. I got a woman bound to me to this day, looking at everything I do, watching everything, sitting inside me. You see my physical features changing. They're all bound to me. Even got homosexual men. The Lord let me know men bind themselves to me so they can look more feminine, like taking everything out of me. You're going to answer to God for this. Just because something happened to you, you don't have to stay in that bondage. Yes, I empathize with what happened to you. You might have been molested. You might have been abused. But that is what Jesus is there for, to heal you and deliver you. That doesn't mean you stay in your captivity and your bondage. That doesn't mean you put your burden on another human being. You go to him and help him heal you. Like I said, he can take me out of it. When I was stuck here, when my father introduced me to pornography and I had all these burdens upon me and generational sins and other people casting their burdens upon me, he could deliver me out of this. That's what this whole ministry was about. And you all destroyed it and sullied it and defiled it. And you lied on me. You lied on me by making me to carry your burden. You cast your burden, your shame upon me that did not even belong to me. It was not mine. And you perpetrated yourself as someone that was not you. That you perpetrate and portrayed yourself as myself. You were a perpetrator. You portrayed yourself as something else. You were an imposter. You emulated it. See, there are people in the church, there are wolves in the church who are emulators, and they're not filled with the Spirit. They can talk about God. They show a form of godliness, but inwardly they're ravening wolves. You have to look at your heart. Are you a wolf? Or are you a real sheep of God? Are you a sheep of Christ? Because see, what he said, if you're not a part of his flock, anyone who enters the sheepfold without going through the door, and you go in and you climb in some other way, meaning you're binding yourself to somebody else, you're stealing their anointing, you're taking everything out of them, you're not serving, you're not connected to that vine themselves, you are the same as a thief and a robber, and we already know where thieves and robbers are going. You're not going to have a place in his kingdom. And so this is why I get on here. So you think you can fight me, you think you can silence me, you're fighting God, because his hand is on me, and I owe apology. The only reason I said apologize, because I'm not going to sit here and try to demean my Heavenly Father like that. I have to correct that. And yes, I suffer, and I get tired of suffering. I get tired of everyone having an easy life. And those who have stolen from me, it's unjust. But God is a God of justice, and he has seen everything that I've gone through. And he has seen everything you all have done. And yes, those who have done this, and you have not repented and come out of your sins, and you have not paid what you owe me. A lot of you have stolen from me. You have not paid me. It says in the Bible, when you're caught of stealing, when a man has stolen something from someone and you're caught, you're supposed to give them back sevenfold of what you've stolen, everything in your house. And many of you have not restored what you owe me. You have taken from me. You have not made penance. You have not made up for it. You have caused me to be at a disadvantage by taking from me. You have not made up for it. If you remember in the Bible, really quick before I wrap up, because I know this is very long. If you remember in the Bible, when Abraham, he told, when he first went to, I forgot where he was. He first went to this land, and they were there. He was fearful. And the men saw Sarah. Sarah was a very beautiful woman. That was his wife, but she was his half sister. And so he lied to them and said, he told the Pharaoh that that's my sister. And so they took Sarah, and he wanted to marry her and be with her, but he didn't lay with her. The angel came to him that night, and God told him, he says, he came to Abimelech and told him, he says, you give him back what is his. That's his wife. If you don't give him back what is his, I'm going to take you and everything in your house, meaning he's going to take his life and he's going to destroy everything of his. He said, you give him back and he will restore you. He's a prophet. He will pay for you. He will pray for you. But he told him to restore what was his first, and then he would pray for him. And so he did not, he had to restore right away. And so Abraham prayed for him that God will give him mercy. And so see, when you touch something that belongs to something that is anointed and God had it for a purpose, you're supposed to make penance and you're supposed to do right. And many of you have chosen not to give part of your heart. So that's where we're at now. God's going to be, he knows what you've done. You've stolen from his people. You've robbed his anointed. You've robbed his servants. You've taken everything. You have not made penance. You've not given them what they owe. And instead, you want to cover it up by trying to murder me, by trying to cover up and destroy these people's lives. And you already know in the Bible what it says. My life is in God's hands. And yes, I might have said, hey, I want you to take me out of here because I'm so tired of the suffering. They say I've been abused on every end, and we have been subjected to so much mistreatment and so much pain. But I don't really want to lose my life. I had to repent to God for that because, see, I can't take my life for granted, even though I'm suffering. He said an abundant life, but I still want life. I don't want to die. And so when I was sitting here over the weekend struggling for the last 2-3 days, struggling to breathe, I'm like, wow, Lord, I'm suffering. I'd rather you just... Lord, I know my life is in you, but I don't want to sit here suffering. Like, I could not breathe. And like, Lord, I'm like this. And imagine, and then you're trying to take medicine, nothing is relieving you. And the Lord let me know, hey, you said you wanted to die. I mean, they're doing this, so they're doing it. But he's letting it go because, hey, I said this. You have to watch what we say. We have to watch what we say sometimes. And so, yes, I had to pray to God, but those who are doing this, tormenting me, his servant, because even before I said, you all have tried to murder me numerous times, and I'm going to get on here and say it. You're not going to cover this up. God knows who's doing it. You might think you're hiding, using your enchantments and hiding behind your veils and magic. Everything you have done to me, you're going to reap what you have sown. That's what is serious. You better get it together. But see, you walking around in your emotions, letting your emotions dictate. You're getting in a lot of trouble with God by doing something because you get mad and you want to sit here and try to attack somebody. Like you tell me, be careful. You send little messages across my page thinking I don't know what's coming from you. Be careful who you mess with. There's always somebody who might be crazier than you. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to gloat about being crazy. But what I want to let you know, be careful who you mess with too, because you never know who they got backing them up. And I have my Heavenly Father backing me up. I have the King of Kings and Lord of Lords backing me up. I have his entire army backing me up. So whoever's fighting against me, whoever's joining you in your battle against me, best believe that they're now going to be fighting up against God. Because he's not going to sit back and let you fight up against me, especially when you wrong. And he told me to come and do a work for him, and you fighting up against me. And you fight me for something that is not even yours, something that's mine, but belongs to me. And you think you're going to fight me and silence me and shut me up. I'm working for God. So be careful who you're doing sorcery on. Be careful who you're trying to murder. Be careful who you try to slander. Be careful who you try to wrongfully accuse. Be careful who you try to put in captivity and bondage. Be careful of who you try to oppress. Be careful whose inheritance you're walking around with. I'm just letting you know that.